Hello, everybody. Welcome to NJ Thrive's Small Business Webinars. Today is Tuesday, January 16th, and you are attending our weekly webinar created to help New Jersey small business owners start, grow, and thrive. I'm your host, Uzma Sheikh, and you are attending our webinar for NJSBDC, and that acronym stands for America's New Jersey Small Business Development Centers Network. It's a mouthful, but you can just stick with NJSBDC. So what does NJSBDC do, or what is it? It is a statewide program powered by the SBA, Small Business Administration, and partners to help small businesses in New Jersey with three main things. No cost small business consulting, training and events starting at $0, just like this one that you're attending, and exclusive small business resources. On the map, you'll see it's the state of New Jersey in all the counties divided. And wherever you see the SBDC logo is where our in-person regional centers are located. So if you're ever interested in going to our regional center in person, whether there are events or for a counseling session or just to say hi, then make sure to go to njsbdc.com, see if you can make an appointment, and yeah, you can visit our website and find all the resources there. So you are attending one of our sessions for our multi-session webinar series that we created to help aspiring entrepreneurs with registering their businesses here in the state of New Jersey. So that's what that is, which is different from our Thursday webinars where we discuss different topics. However, the Tuesday webinars are dedicated solely to registrations. So on the agenda, we have our headlines that we like to share, whatever is happening in our small business community in the state of New Jersey. Then we have our presentation from our speaker and then the Q&A session. So these headlines we've shared in the past week. There is unfortunately really nothing new to share since last week, unfortunately. But if you missed out on last week on Tuesday or Thursday, these are the headlines. If you were here, you were attending, then we've already gone over it. So NJEDA support advances growth of artificial intelligence industry companies in New Jersey. Recently announced AI hub at Princeton University powered by the NJEDA will enable growth of AI in New Jersey. This is an announcement with Princeton for attracting and retaining AI companies in the state. It mentions New Jersey Innovation Fellows Program, which is the NJIF. It also mentions research with NJ. So lots of information to understand. So I highly recommend that in the links that I will be sharing in the chat in a few minutes, you go ahead and take a look. Second is SBA Growth Accelerator Fund competition opens January 8th to expand and strengthen its national innovation ecosystem. This is a press release from the SBA. Organizations will compete in two stages for $50,000 to $200,000 in prizes. They will award up to $3 million in stage one prizes. There are themes mentioned here, theme areas that they will be focusing on. So you may want to read up on this. And there were webinars. So there is a webinar at 2 p.m. Eastern time today, pre-application webinar, and then theme explanation webinar on the 31st. A press release from the SBA marking a 1-year anniversary of Veteran Small Business Certification Program. So pretty cool information to look through. Please take a look at the links that I share. Some things to keep in mind, housekeeping rules that we like you to follow and for us to follow. Type questions in the Q&A box, please. You'll see there's a chat box and a Q&A box. Chat we reserve for comments, any remarks, things like that. Q&A session that we do at the end. We'd like all your questions to be answered. So if they're in one focused area, then it's easier that way. If you'd like to receive the presentation, then please complete our survey and you'll receive the link. It's via Google form, pretty simple. And just FYI, this webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel and our video library on our website. in 1 to 2 business days. All right, so for today we have Ryan, who's our capital team consultant, doing our business registration series session. So Ryan, welcome. He is taking Vanessa's place today, who has been wonderful doing our webinar so far. But today we have Ryan. So welcome, Ryan. Thank you for doing this for us. And please go ahead and share your screen.
All right. Thank you, and happy Taco Tuesday, or Tuesday Thrives, right? You know that should be the new holiday. All right, so let's get right into it, and let me share my screen. All right. So as you guys see, I'm not Vanessa, but I am filling in for her, and she's been doing a good job at these workshops on on Tuesdays. And the idea is to help guide you through the process of getting a company registered. There is a little bit of a mindset that needs to happen before we get to this point in your journey. And that mindset is, working through the business plan and choosing the right legal structure. But that's part of what we're going to talk to today. What the right legal structure is, and a little bit about how to go about getting it registered. So this is going to be a little bit of the agenda that we're going to cover. What are some of the most common business structures that are out there? How do we get that business structure registered? Things that we should be aware of with regulations and taxes. And like with any business, understanding our capital needs and our capital structure. And then a couple of other bonus, additional needs that we'll get into, and then obviously how to work with us and with any other resource to help you along your business growth. So before I go into the particular, sole proprietorship, there are several business entities, and I'm sure we've all heard of LLCs, I'm sure we've even heard of LLPs, which I don't believe are covered here. But ultimately, the main difference between any type of legal structure falls within basically two categories. How much protection do you have for legal liability, and how much protection do you have for tax liability? Each one also gives you the ability to do something unique, like do business outside of New Jersey, do business internationally, sell stocks into your company. So the nature of your business really determines, not the nature of your business, but the nature of your business along with what your intended goals are for the business within that tax year, really determine which legal structure we should choose. Most of the questions that you should be asking yourself are questions like, do I have any assets? And if are those assets something that I really want to take time to protect? How many owners are going to be with the company? Is it just you, or do you plan on doing crowdfunding and giving small pieces of equity to over 100 people? Because each legal entity structure that we choose does have certain limitations. Other questions that we should ask ourselves are, if we are working with other people, how comfortable are we that they might have debt or legal actions that might impact us? We want to make sure sometimes that if there are other people in our companies with us, that there's a clear separation between their personal liability and what might impact the company. Do you plan on having outside investors? Another big important question. So some of these questions are the questions that you would jot down and then speak to your accountant, to your tax attorney, to help you choose the right one. Another big important one that I like is continuity of life. That one is usually skipped over by most people who are new to business. And what continuity of life means is it's a set of documents that makes the transition for the company to go on without you. And it makes the process a little bit easier and more seamless. This is good if you're planning on starting a company and that you might plan to sell the company afterwards, or having some type of policies in case something happens to you, and that it can go on to someone that someone that you declared. But these type of ideas. Oh, another big one is, are you going to get a company managed by yourself or managed by a group of people? So once you get some of these questions answered, it tells you which legal structure entity is going to be the best one for you. So if we do choose the sole proprietorship.
Ryan,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. Are you sharing your screen?
Yeah.
I am not seeing it on my end.
Oh, really? All right, let me let me stop it and reshare it. 1 second. Thanks for letting me know. All
Yep.
right. All right. Oh, perfect. You guys see it?
Okay. Yes.
All right. Apologize about that, guys. Um, so on the sole partnership, the sole partnership essentially means that you and the company are virtually one and the same. So your tax liability on a personal side is the same tax liability on your business side. And the same thing, whatever personal assets you have and whatever business assets that the business has are still one and the same. Uh, for some businesses, this makes perfect sense, very inexpensive, easy to form. It's done at a county level. And it's perhaps the one for smaller projects, something that I'm going to do off on the side. Or if I'm just starting out, I can always start off with one legal structure, and then as my company grows, I can then evolve into the next legal structure. And income is always passed through with this one and with the LLC that we'll get into next through your through your personal schedules. So this one will be a Schedule C. And like I said, no separation between who what the business assets are and what your personal assets are. That's on the sole partnership. Let's see. Here we go. In the middle, you have a hybrid, and the hybrid is an LLC. So an LLC gives you limits to the liability, so it's a limited liability company. And the idea is combining some benefits from the corporation side, along with some of the ease of and simplicity of the sole partnership. This is perhaps the most common. It's almost like the one size fits most people. But we want to make sure that we speak to a tax attorney, to an accountant, to an attorney, to make sure that we're choosing the right one for you. Now, with the limited liability company, there are some fun facts here. It does create, let's see, separate business bank account. Yep, that should a business bank account. It should always be in existence for all companies. However, it's difficult to get a business bank account without a business entity. So we want to make sure that we get the LLC. And just like with the sole partnership, all your income gets filed on your Schedule C. You do have options to choose a filer. So we'll get into some terminology a little bit later. But a filer would be the 1065 and 1120. And that pretty much means, are we going to be a single member LLC? Is it a partnership LLC? We also have something called an 1120S. And 1120S means that I am going to elect to tax my tax structure as an S corp, so that I could ultimately reduce my tax liability by giving myself a salary. So that's it's recognized as an expense before before it goes into my personal taxes. But again, as with all companies, there are limits to the liability from LLC and beyond. Your sole partnership, again, is the only one that does not have that liability protection. Now, corporations are on the opposite side. Corporations are companies that can operate nationally, which is a nice distinction between this one and the LLC. LLCs are companies that are registered at a state level. So if you register an LLC, business can only happen in the state of New Jersey. I can send a product anywhere in the world. I can mail if I sell notebooks, I can mail the notebook, out of the country. But the transaction is an American transaction or a New Jersey-based transaction. So it's very important. And if I want to have a physical presence and do a transaction outside the state of New Jersey, I have to do two things. If I'm an LLC, I have to make sure either A, that other company has, or other states has a reciprocal relationship with the state of New Jersey, which means it allows a foreign company, let's say New York or Pennsylvania, to come in and act as a business in that state. Some states allow New Jersey LLCs to operate there. Some states do not. And that's where a corporation takes a little bit more of an advantage. A corporation allows you to operate throughout the entire country. But if we do elect to do a corporation, we do have some more protection, but we also have a little bit more structure. So it's a good advice to create bylaws, create a board of directors. And although it sounds pretty fancy, there are templates that are pretty easy to get for bylaws, and 2 or 3 advisors that you work with on a regular basis could also serve as your board of directors. And on the corporation side, one of the more, I guess, the dangerous side is if we're not mindful of our tax structure, we could be subject to what's called the double taxation. So we're being taxed on the profits that the company makes, and then you're going to be taxed again on a personal level on how much of that profit came to you personally. So there's 2 types of corporations: corporation subchapter C and a corporation subchapter S. C is going to be very important if we're planning on building a company and going public, or raising a lot of investors where we're going to be issuing different types of stock. And that stock issues are going to be greater than 100 people. That's when we go into the corporation subchapter C. Usually your largest companies are your C corps. Corporation subchapter S is perhaps a little bit more common, or not perhaps, is a bit more common, and is an elective also under an LLC. So I can choose to have an LLC and get my tax structure as a S corp. Again, the idea is through tax strategy, reduce my tax liability. So that's the main benefit. Another benefit, again, like I mentioned, for choosing an S corp, is that it allows you to do business across the entire country. So your name is protected across the entire country, and the ability for you to do business anywhere in the country is something that is pretty impactful. If you do choose to have your LLC taxed as an S corp because your accountant or attorney told you that's a good elective, the form that we're going to be looking at is a Form 2553, available on irs.gov. From here on, we're going to speak about LLCs. It's perhaps the most common one that we see here, and for good reason. It's easy to register, right? Relatively easy to manage, and it gives you a nice combination of protection on the legal tech side, and freedom and ease of use. So the registration process really comes down to 3 pretty easy steps. The first step is going to be your CID, which is your corporate ID. That's when I go to the state of New Jersey and I register the company at the state of New Jersey's level. They'll give me a corporate ID number, and that's called your CID. The second step is I go to the IRS website and I get an EIN. That's going to be my employer identification number. And the third and final step is I go back to the state of New Jersey's website and I register, and I link the 2. That's registration for state taxes. And once I complete all 3 steps, I will be able to be in business and legally registered to sell my product or my service. It's very careful. I would be very careful if you guys choose to use a third-party company, as they usually miss some steps that are specific to New Jersey in that registration process. So some of the points here that are mentioned, let's see. Similar to what I just said, don't pay a third party. If you do, it's okay. Just make sure that everything has been done correctly. An SBDC counselor, advisor, does guide you. Our job is to give you the education and the information for you to make a good decision. So any questions that you can have, reach out to your local SBDC office, reach out to Vanessa, and they will be able to kind of give you a general guidance for you to then discuss that, very important, with your attorney or your accountant. There is some terminology that is very specific to this world that is not used outside. For example, I mentioned a couple of times owners, but in the world of incorporation or in registering your business, they're referred to as members, or a registered agent is another term that's not commonly used. And registered agent is pretty much means who represents the company on a legal side, who's going to receive the mail legally, who can get any of the legal documents. So those are things that that we can guide you through before you start the process. There are some websites. There is a website here. There's a few other ones, throughout throughout the presentation that does give you a lot of uh, good background info that helps you make more intelligent decisions. Understanding your obligations and legal requirements, very important. For example, every year, we now have a new requirement to update our ownership structure. And knowing that that's one of our obligations and one of our legal requirements, again, helps me better plan for, for my administration stuff. Keeping documents organized and accessible. I personally like to use a secured cloud folder for all my legal documents. That way, at any point, if someone's asking me for my tax ID or a certain certificate or policy, insurance policy, I have access to all my business documents on a secured cloud-based folder. But whatever system works best for you, it's very important to have them accessible. Something that we see common here is somebody is asking us to help them find their old number, or contacting the IRS and getting an old number back. It's possible. It just takes a little bit more work, and it's something that could have been avoided. And then maintaining your bookkeeping records. I'll go over a couple of points that I put into practice with me and my clients that help ensure a good setup before we start actually doing business. But I'll go over that in a little bit. On the registration side, let's see what else we have here. Do not forget to register the company in order. So that's what I was mentioning before. So we're going to the three-step process. One, which is your CID, two, your EIN, and then three, your state taxes. That's that first bullet point. That's the process where I go back to the state of New Jersey and I say this corporate ID and this tax ID are linked, are one and the same. Something that's very important for business planning purposes is what's taxed and at what rate. Oftentimes a product, depending on the final configuration, is taxable or not taxable. And it's important to stay up to date with that. This link here does take us to a portal, and it's a PDF document that shows all of the different items and whether we should be collecting tax on it or not. And it's something that will be shared with you guys here, but it's something that you guys should be mindful of on a regular ongoing basis. Let's see. Yep, the stuff can be overlooked, and it could cause problems a little bit later on. And let's see if there's a third party legal. Yeah, it's similar to what was said before. Make sure that we don't skip any of these steps. Let's see. What's the next slide? And before you begin, a couple of things to note. When choosing a unique name, now this is my personal opinion. The name doesn't necessarily break or make a company, but it does aid in its marketing and its branding. If you are emotionally invested into a name, do some due diligence to make sure that you have the ability to use that name. If you register your name as an LLC and then stop there, your name is only protected in the state of New Jersey. I can legally go into New York, Pennsylvania, any of the neighboring states or anywhere in the country and choose the same exact name. And legally, I have just as much rights to that name as you do if we're both as LLCs. So the step around that is to take one extra step and go to the USPTO website, United States Patent and Trade Office.gov, and then do a little research there to see if the name is registered by anybody else. If it's not, then you're good to go and you have no problems. That's only if you plan on expanding outside of the state of New Jersey and you plan on being an LLC. So it's just a little added step, but it can help, clear up a lot of headaches. I'm sure you guys have seen headlines. If not, I can tell you famous companies that have had to change their name as a result of skipping that step. The EIN number, which is what I mentioned, we can go to IRS website. It's relatively easy and quick. It is free. And once we get that number, again, we link it to our CIN through the state process at the end. It does save time if you have codes handy because your codes are going to be asked of you. And this is to help identify what tax structure or what tax expectations is the state or the federal government going to expect from you. So your NAICS code, which is your North American Industry Classification System, that's simply a code that says this is the product or service that you're selling. And you can have multiple codes. So you can have a primary code. This is my primary product or my service. And then I have all my secondary codes and services. That says that by my primary code, I expect to collect this much in tax, or I expect not to collect this, or not collect, certain taxes. And the New Jersey Industry Code is the same exact thing, but exclusive to New Jersey. On both sides, we can go to different websites, and NAICS on one, and you can just Google New Jersey Industry Codes on the other. And with New Jersey Industry Codes, you'll get a PDF. Look through the basic category, first, and then filter it out by your specific industry, and then you can write down that little code, which will be used a little bit later on. Choose a registered agent. It depends on you personally, and some of the questions that I asked before and how you guys answer it, whether you're going to choose somebody else to be a registered agent, or if you want to represent yourself as your own registered agent. There is no right or wrong answer. It just depends on the nuances of your business. In my case, I am my own registered agent in most of my companies. An operating agreement, if it's an LLC, a bylaw, if it's a corporation, but essentially it's the same document, and it's a set of rules on how the company will be operating. It's not a legal requirement, although it is a very strong business practice to implement into your company. The fee here is associated with the LLC, so at the state level. And that's something that is done again between you and the state of New Jersey. And there is a yearly filing fee, significantly less than this, but it's called the Certificate of Good Standing. And you do that once a year once you file your taxes. And it's just to ensure that we're still in good standing, we're still here operating, and it's business as usual. And obviously have your names, owners, names of the owners, social security numbers, owners of the percentages of each company, of each person, and that information will be entered at the registration point. Let's see. If we're doing the LLC again, things to know is yeah, if it's a single member LLC, we will be using your Schedule C. If it's a multi-member LLC, then it's a 1065, as I mentioned earlier. And if we're doing a partnership, or filed as a S corp, then we do the 1120. So again, which one is the right one for us? We can only give you some basic education. It's strongly advised to make sure that you contact your tax attorney, your accountant, to go over the details to see which one is the best fit for you. So let's see, know if your sales of your goods or services are subject to state taxes. That's what I mentioned before. If your business requires additional registration certificates, that's a big one. That's one of the steps that I'll get into in a moment. Some businesses require additional licenses or permits to do. That New Jersey portal website that we showed a little while ago gives you a good guideline and guidance as to which businesses require additional certificates to be able to operate in the state of New Jersey, and then how to go about doing that. I think at this point it's a good time to kind of go over the other things that we can have in place before we start the registration process. And we simply start with feasibility, feasibility of the product, feasibility of the name that we mentioned. If we're going to be operating just within my county, what's my reach? What resources do I have, and what distance, what geography am I going to be able to operate in? For those of us that are close to a state line, it's very easy to say I can take a customer across the river if it's New York City, or across state line if it's Pennsylvania. And if we're choosing one of those electives, then it tells us this is what we should be, either an LLC with a foreign entity registration, or an S corp, as an example. Other things to take into consideration, like I mentioned, is your IP. It's heavily overlooked, and it's an asset that is pretty heavily leveraged or leverageable. And your IP is not just your intellectual property, by the way, it's not just your name, but it could also be processes. It could be literature that you guys create pamphlets, information, videos. So there's a lot there that could be customer list. That's all part of your IP that you want to make sure is always protected so that either I don't know, employees or vendors can't circumvent you or leverage your IP without compensating you for that. So that's very important. Something that we need to take some time to give thought at this point as well are the contracts. Do I have all the contracts in place that I need? Contracts for my vendors, contracts for my customers, contracts for employees. So this is a good time to make sure that we have some templates. There's a lot of templates out there, and most of them do a pretty good job at uh, um I guess doing its job, but we want to make sure that it's reviewed by a professional that is a paid professional by you, an outside counsel as an example, to make sure that it fits the use and the geography. Bank accounts, as I mentioned, and getting your bookkeeping system linked into your bank account would be a very good use of your time and feasibility. Leases or home office setup is another good one for us to do at this time. So if I'm going to be working out of my home office, is my accountant aware of this? Are there tax advantages that are available that my accountant might have missed, if it's a home office setup. If not, if it's a lease, make sure we go over, what the leases requirements are so that I can better plan my financial requirements. If I do plan to hire people, what HR policies do I have on hand? Make sure I have a good team is another one that's very important this time, which will be, who is my accountant, who are my advisors. So things like this are very essential to do now before we actually start selling. And what part, I almost forgot, one of my most important ones is insurance. During the pandemic, a lot of businesses failed, and I think that could have been not necessarily eliminated, but significantly reduced if we had the right insurance policies in place in order to protect us from any changes in the environment, economic downfall. So having a good insurance agent on hand is essential for longevity of the business. Let's see. So here are a couple of links that are helpful for registering the business. Our business licenses, like I mentioned before, this is the one that we can make sure that does my business require an additional license or certificate to operate. We go through here and then it guides us to the right one. State tax requirements. This is what I was mentioning before. Income tax requirements. This one is going to be on more for tax planning purposes, which, by the way, is something that should be done on at least a yearly basis. Have a conversation with your accountant that is tax planning. If we're only using our accountant once a year to file our taxes, we're not using our accountants to the best of their ability. It's very important for us to have conversations with tax strategy, what our goals are, and if possible, have a quarterly, checkup with your accountant to make sure that we're still on the right trajectory, because your accountant is your financial advisor. And we want to make sure that we're using that as the best way possible. Again, and if we are hiring people, some helpful links over here. Now on the funding side, so we're all in business to make money. We want to make sure that is going to be my cash burn rate. I'm going to be using more cash than I am creating for this many months. And at that time, what is the plan to have my bills paid on a regular basis? How much reserves do I have as an example? Do I need a line of credit from a bank in order to keep the lights on, the bills paid until I hit that break-even point? A line of credit from a bank is generally a good idea, even if I already hit that break-even point and I just have a cyclical cycle with or cyclical cash flow cycle. So if Christmas is my busiest time, but shortly after Christmas, Q1 and Q2 are my low times, I can use that line of credit to satisfy those cash flow shortfalls. That's the best way to do it. So these are questions that are going to come up when you're planning your when you're creating your pro forma, your projections and your business plan, with one of the consultants here at the SBDC to make sure that we have all bases covered and the proper source of capital identified. Very important. Just because we have access to capital doesn't mean that we should take it. The right money has to match the right assets. An easy, I guess, slogan or motto is long-term assets will always match long-term debt, and vice versa. Short-term assets, short-term debt, making sure that that we have the right money being used in the right way. If not, our cost of capital increases and our profit decreases. So, lender's view. So, yep. So here are a couple of points. I like to summarize that if we are going to ask for money, we look at five. When I say we, the general banking industry looks at five things. We call those the 5 C's of lending: the credit, the compensation, the collateral. Those are universal. The last two are very specific for the world of business, and that is the conditions, what's happening in the world around us, and what are we doing about it in a good way, and or how are we protecting ourselves, as a contingency plan. And the last one is character, which is who are you and why are you an asset to this business? So when we combine all five, it tells us what the risk associated with investing into your business is. The same thing is also going to be true for seeking private investments. If I can put those five elements into a pitch deck, it makes the investor or the bank feel that much more comfortable with investing into you. And then, like I mentioned before, getting your bookkeeping systems set up. Whatever system works best for you, fantastic. I like a lot of automation personally, so I look for technology tools that can help automate things, but I regularly, with my own businesses, will do at least a monthly, I try to do it weekly, but I can't do it always weekly, reconciliation to make sure that whatever automation systems have in place, things were done correctly, and there's a bunch of systems out there, and there are some bookkeeping software solutions that are free. There's some that QuickBooks is kind of gold standard. That one comes at a monthly subscription if you choose the online version. But they're all essential to have in order to plan my business correctly. The team that you're going to need, and I think we're almost done, so we'll start questions soon. But these are just some recommendations of good team members to have as part of your business advisory circle. A good accountant. When selecting an accountant, you can ask questions like, have you worked with businesses similar to mine? What experience do you have? Are you a CPA? And based on how they answer those questions, if you feel comfortable with them, that might be a good accountant for you. Same thing with the lawyer. Make sure that they practice in your field, that they have experience dealing with businesses at your size, in your geography. Good insurance agent, as I mentioned before, is very well aware of what policies you might be exposed or not taken advantage of, and so you don't expose yourself to unnecessary risk. And an insurance agent is one of those things where we don't really think of them too much until we actually need it. Lenders are going to be very specific to the stage of business that you're in. The lenders that we speak to today, if today is the day that you register your company, are a little bit different than the lenders that we speak to 2 or 3 or 4 years from now, depending on the capital needs of the company. The dollar amount and the age and the risk and the industry will dictate what lender is available to speak to you at that time. So some of these lenders will be changing on a regular basis. Marketing is perhaps, in my opinion, the engine of your business. The best product or service in the world doesn't sell if I don't know it exists or I forgot that it exists. So we always implement, at least I like to implement my my marketing, maybe 30, 40, 60 days before launching my company or launching a new product or launching into a new market. So I want to make sure that once I do open those doors for business, I do have some traction and I'm not waiting on customers to ramp up sales. And a business mentor, if you're lucky enough to have a business mentor, it's always a great idea. Next steps. So with New Jersey, there are certain certificates that can help the business grow if the business has that type of business model. So you can get a certificate that certifies that the business is owned by a woman, by a minority, by a veteran, by some type of group that allows you to have a competitive advantage when asking for or when soliciting for contracts, procurements. We have consultants here that can help with certifications. We have consultants here that can help with getting those procurement, those contracts that I just mentioned, lending, SBA and non-SBA. So we're not limited to just SBA conversations. We can help with any type of funding. NJEDA assistance. NJEDA is perhaps one of our secret weapons that we constantly go to because they have just so many resources that are available on a regular basis. And their product offering updates every single year. There's always new incentives and new initiatives that NJEDA is doing. And to help navigate through those applications, we're very up to date on what NJEDA is requiring for that particular program. And lastly, just like you're doing now, be mindful of what educational programs the NJSBDC is putting together in order to help you guys out. So, and I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. So let me see, how much time do we have for questions? Good, perfect. We have some time for questions. So let me take a look at the questions that we have and see what I can start to
I have
answer.
about 15 minutes or so for questions. Ryan, I think we should keep your screen on because I've seen questions that are referring back to some of the topics that you mentioned.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yep. And then we'll take the questions in the order that we received them. I just
Cool.
want to give two reminders for our audience. One is that this webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our website and also our YouTube channel. So I've shared those links in the chat. Just scroll up or down based on where you are. And you'll see those links. And second is that you'll receive these slides when you complete our brief survey. So first question is from Anonymous. They say, you said first it's formation, but it will ask you the EIN number, second EIN on IRS, then come back to registration.
Yep. So you're right. There is a part on the state's website that will ask for your EIN, but you are allowed to go through that step. That's just the second step that's asking you, or technically the third step. So when you go to the state of New Jersey's website for the first time, I say I want to register a company, and I can go through all those steps, even though that at the end there is a open field that says, what is your EIN number? That's there as a reserve question. Once you complete the CID and you go then as a second step to the IRS website, get your EIN, I take that EIN number and I go back to that same website that you were just on and I complete the process. So even though it is asking you for the EIN, that's just for the second half of that process. The first half of that process, you do not need your EIN. Done it tons of times, and that might be a good reason for you to reach out to the SBDC, to Vanessa's office and Vanessa's team to help you with that. So second question, can you explain the first step, corporate ID, CIN? I never heard of this until now. Yep, so sometimes it's not usually called, most people don't refer to it as CID. But it is your corporate ID number. Once you register your company with the state of New Jersey, it will ask you, what product do you plan on what product or service do you plan on providing? The process that I was just talking about now, at the very end, you get a PDF document. At the very top of that document, in the center, is a series of numbers. It's not labeled as your CID, but it is your corporate ID. It's a corporate identification number. That's the number that we use on that second half, along with the EIN from the IRS, combining the two so that we register for taxes. But that's the simple process. These presentations have been great. Would you still recommend with the meetup? Absolutely. A presentation, no matter how, and I thank you for that, but any presentation or any class can always be heightened by a conversation, because every one of us has a unique situation that will not be addressed or might be, I don't know, might be an oversight within the presentation. So I definitely recommend a conversation with an SBDC agent. Let's see. Please repeat the website to verify the company name. Oh, yes, absolutely. That's US, United States, PTO, Patent Trade Office.gov. And once you go there, you can look up different forms of intellectual property. In this case, we want to look up trademarks, and what trademarks have been registered by other companies. A couple of famous examples you guys can look up. Burger King, Victoria's Secret. Those are companies that at some point in time had this exact issue. So it's a very important step to make sure that we take advantage of. Let's see. The next question. What is the $75 maintenance fee for if you opt for an LLC? I don't remember seeing a $75 maintenance fee, but let me see if I can go back. I know that there's a yearly fee for your certificate of good standing. I don't remember a $75 fee. This is one fee over here, $125 that's for the registration. Let me see if I see anything else that says 75. $75 to maintain. Oh, so I guess it might have gone up. The certificate of good standing might now be $75. So if there is a yearly maintenance fee, that is the certificate of good standing. What is the next question? Let's see. Sorry if I missed this. If I have an LLC and elect an S corp, does completing the 1120 replace schedule C? Yes, it does. Those are two separate forms. Or is it in addition to? Nope. It's a replacement of. And the reason is because the tax structure takes an added layer of detail, of complexity, and it can be better reflected on the different form. Let's see. I started the process for registering my business. I have the EIN, good, and did a name check. Fantastic. Will this secure my name, or will I have to start the entire process over? No. If you already started the process of checking your name availability and you have your EIN, the name is yours. But remember, the name is yours as of the moment that you register the name. If you did the name check yesterday and this morning someone came in and took that same name, the name is no longer available. Also, if we're doing an LLC, that name check is only at the state level, which is fine. If I plan on being a New Jersey business exclusively, then that's all I need. So it depends on what my grand vision is, I guess. Let's see. I currently have an LLC in New Jersey with a few employees. I plan on relocating myself personally to Vermont. Oh, perfect. But still operating in New Jersey and Vermont. How can I find out if Vermont is reciprocal? And if not, what is the process for me to do this? Oh, fantastic question. All right, so let me finish the question and then I'll go into the answer. How can I operate in an LLC in Vermont, but still have a location in New Jersey? If there is not, if not reciprocal, and do I need two separate businesses? So the best way to answer that is with the conversation through your accountant and through a tax attorney. I don't have memorized every state that has that reciprocal relationship with the state of New Jersey. So the way I would find out is the Department of Revenue. Every state calls it something a little bit different, but essentially it's the Department of Revenue for Vermont. And we can ask them if they allow a foreign entity, a New Jersey LLC, to operate within the state of Vermont. If they do not, then you have two options. Either option A is form another LLC just for Vermont and keep your LLC in New Jersey. So now you're running two companies, which is fine. Or dissolve your, actually I have three options. Dissolve your New Jersey LLC and turn that into a corporation. Or three, you can move your New Jersey LLC to Vermont, which doesn't sound like it's going to be the option because we can actually migrate the LLC from one state to another state. Not always the easiest process to do, so it's always best to have that conversation with your tax attorney. But that would be the three different ways of solving this problem or this concern, this question. Let's see. With my mental health practice, I am now able to see clients virtually out of state. I have a LLC. What do I need to do since these new clients will be located out of states? Will that matter, or do I need to complete? It's a great question. So for online businesses, rules are constantly evolving. Online business is relatively new in American history, or in world history, I should say. As a result, some policies are being updated. I would check with the with whatever the newest updates are. But generally speaking, you do not need to change your legal structure, because the service is being provided virtually, but they're visiting a New Jersey company for that mental health. I actually have a client that is in this exact situation, and very similar business, and they have a New Jersey LLC, and outside companies can come in, or outside customers can come into the New Jersey website and do business with the New Jersey website. It's very similar to mailing a product, at least the way it's seen today, or as of the last time that I came across this issue, which was maybe about a little less than a year ago. I can create a product in New Jersey and ship it. In this case, the product that's being created in New Jersey is the service. So for that reason, you should be okay. But that's something that I would keep up to date with your attorney. Can you explain the limited liability for LLCs? What kind of things are protected versus what is usually protected? Okay. Even if you give general overview, and okay. So the two protections that you have, one is for legal liability. There is a dollar amount that you are personally liable for, so it puts a limit on those liabilities. But that's if it goes through the entire court system and it finds that you are negligent, then what your negligence obligates you to pay, or your insurance company to pay, is up to a certain dollar amount. That's the limits of the liability. It also puts limits on the tax liability too, and what you can be taxed on versus a sole proprietorship versus an LLC. But the exact thresholds are best if it's discussed with an attorney, or if you reach out to the SBDC, we can look up the guidelines specifically for you that apply in your industry and in your situation. Let's see. My CPA continues to tell me to stay taxed as a single member LLC and says it saves me on taxes. I have 3 employees and take owner's draw as my pay instead of my thing just moved. Let's see. Okay, instead of paying on payroll, but it seems like it might be more beneficial to be taxed as an S corp. Others in the same industry say their accountant has set them up as LLCs. Yep. So without looking at the books and looking at your exact situation, I can't give you an intelligent opinion. What I can tell you is that just like with medical processes and surgeries, I always can take a second opinion. Anytime someone's going to take a knife to my body, or in this case, take potentially money out of my checking account, whether it's the IRS or in the state government, it's very important to get a second and third opinion. So to look at it from somebody else's perspective. And if your accountant is a CPA, there is a lot of assurances that they have passed some pretty rigorous testing to make sure that they do know what they're talking about. So I don't know if in your particular case, it does make sense to stay as a single member LLC. I see many benefits on the S corp as long as it's structured correctly. I'm a huge fan of S corps, but again, without having the details, it's hard. My advice would be to just get a second opinion. Let's see. Is it possible to obtain a loan by using my business information, even if I am not actually conducting any business? The technical answer is yes. However, for the vast majority of lenders, the easy answer that they're going to give you is no, because you want to show history. Remember what I mentioned, the 5 C's of lending: credit, compensation. Compensation is cash flow. Show me how have you paid your bills in the past, and show me how you're going to show high likelihood of continuing to pay these bills in the future. If you're asking for a loan that your payment is $100 a month, just show me that you have an extra $100 a month in cash flow to make the payments. So the loans that you can obtain that are very early on that are pre-revenue, and I'm assuming that by not actually conducting any business means that you're pre-revenue with the intention on conducting business, are some startup loans and startup funds, and they're usually limited to what's called microloans. So these are loans typically $25,000 and less. So you're not going to be able to access $1 million if you don't have any track history, but you might be able to get 10, 20, $30,000 depending on the source. Again, typically 25,000 and less, just to jumpstart the system, depending on what the use is, depending on what your credit is, depending if you have any collateral, stuff like that. Let's read the next one. Do you mind sharing secured cloud services you use to park? Oh yeah. So there's a bunch of them. Kind of the go-to one is through Microsoft, something like a OneDrive. But I also am a big fan of Android and Google, so I use a lot of Google Suite software, where I pay in order to have access to extra services from Google's. But those are two perhaps of the most common ones that are out there. And unless it's very, very sensitive information, for example, like my financials are not going to be on either one. But my corporate ID, my tax ID, my insurance documents, those will absolutely be on one of those cloud services. So anything that's too sensitive, that stays on a local drive, or that stays in a very specific software like QuickBooks, and that just stays there and nowhere else. Let's see. Do you mind sharing what you think of using a virtual mailbox as a registered agent? So a mailbox is not a registered agent. A registered agent has to be a person. You can have mail forwarded to a mailbox, that's between you and the post office, but you have to have a person and a physical address on file for registered agents. Let's see. My business is located in a church and ask us to be a nonprofit. Is this that's okay. So nonprofit, this is something that I could talk on for hours. Another legal entity structure that I did not speak about is something called a benefit corporation, not to be confused with a B Corp. So a corporation B or a benefit corporation, two separate, but they're very similar. And that's for a for-profit private business that wants to operate as a nonprofit. Very important, when you create a nonprofit, it is set completely different. It is an election that you choose after you form your company, depending on the state that you're in. But a nonprofit is not owned by you. A nonprofit is not owned by any individual. It is a public entity. So just like a library, the doors have to be open to the general public. The books have to be open to the general public if it's a nonprofit. And as a result, there's a lot more regulation and stringent guidelines that have to be followed when you create a nonprofit. Are nonprofits good? Absolutely, if used in the right way at the right time. So are benefit corporations, but depending on what I need to do, you can still be a for-profit company that works with a church and has a portion of your sales going to the church as part of your mission. But that's not a legal requirement. That's just working well with with that company. Or something I would do are create a sister foundation nonprofit. For example, you have the Johnson & Johnson company, but you also have the Johnson & Johnson Foundation. One feeds the other, which takes care of nonprofit entities and the other nonprofit entities like a church. Does it matter who is the registered agent? As long as it's a person in that state that is of legal age, I don't think there, again, and I'll put the asterisk on, I don't think there is any other requirements. But that's a good question. You can reach out to us again and we'll have an answer for you on that question. Let's see. You mentioned checking separate states to see if they accept New Jersey LLC transactions. Yes. Does that rule apply in regards to performing at venues for live entertainment? Oh, that's a good question. Technical answer is no, but there is a technical side to that I'll address in a minute. I'm starting a music business and I primarily perform in New Jersey. Last year, I was conducted to perform. Okay, so there is a certificate that you can get to do temporary business in certain states. For example, if I'm attending a convention and I go to Las Vegas for whatever the convention happens to be, I can set up temporary shop in that state as long as I get this temporary certificate. Every state's a little bit different, but if I plan on operating regularly and doing a physical transaction, and a transaction is defined by exchange of funds, so if I collect the money in that state, if I go to the other state and I physically collect the money, or I go to that other state and I physically provide the service or the product in that other state, I'm transacting in that state. If I do that regularly, then yes, definitely find out about that reciprocal relationship or corporation. That'll be very helpful. But if you're going to do something every once in a while, no, it's not needed. There are ways around it. Follow up with with one of our consultants, and they should be able to guide you through that process. Let's see. I've seen articles about CTA affecting LLCs. Yep, that's actually what I was referring to earlier today. Can you simplify what that's about in LLCs? Again, simple terms is who are the owners? That's the simplest term. There is a lot more complexity. There is a PDF that you guys can find that goes into all of the guidelines, but it's just to maintain where the owners are and to avoid potential money laundering. That's kind of a super high level overview of it. There's a lot more to it, but that's essentially what it is. I had a business registered in the state of New Jersey, and I no longer operate that business. Do I? Yes, very important. You do need to close out a company. You don't have to close it out before starting another one. You are able to open up 5, 10, 20 different businesses. I have multiple businesses myself. But if you are no longer operating a company, there are still some liability issues that will be existing if you don't close it out. Again, legal liability and tax liability. So it's very important for you to dissolve the company if you no longer plan on using the company. If you think you can use a company in some other way, such as a holding company or you're going to use it soon, so you can put it on a shelf as a shelf company, then there are actions to take for each of those steps. But if you don't plan on using it, absolutely dissolve it. Very important, very strong opinion. My LLC is formed in Delaware. I'm registered in New Jersey. It's very common for people to register companies or form LLCs in different states for different reasons. If I modify my operating agreement for a 2-member LLC to a single-member LLC, do I need to submit? Oh, okay. So that's the short answer is that if it's a multi-member LLC in reality, even though it's a single-member LLC on paper, that can set you up for some problems. So I would definitely either update your articles of formation, and your articles of formation is when you register a company, they're called articles of formation, or your articles of incorporation, if it's a corporation. In some cases, you can update it to modify to show changes in the company. I now have these members that were not part of the company before, or these other members are no longer part of the company. I moved from this address to that address. I now sell 2 new products, so I have 2 new industry codes to my to my company. That's how you update your articles of formation. You can't always make a change from one entity to another, but in most cases you could. So it's very important to talk with your attorney or the person that helped you register your company in the first place to see if those updates can take effect. If not, you would have to create a new company. Let's see. Let's see. How much does it cost to register a sole proprietorship? That's at the county level. So every county is going to be a little bit different. Let me see, how are we on time? Let me take a look at it. Okay, we have a few minutes. So each county has their own rules and regulations for registering a sole proprietorship. So it just depends on the county that you live in and how you register or where you register that company. Would you elaborate about the process to migrate the sole proprietorship company to another state? Okay, so it's very important. When we're migrating a company from one state to another, it's not a sole proprietorship that we're migrating. It's an LLC or corporation. I am unaware if it's possible to migrate a sole proprietorship. So I don't want to say anything about the sole partnership, but when we migrate companies, it is a process that's pretty lengthy, and we are essentially moving the corporate ID to that other state. In some cases, it looks like we're closing out one and opening up another. There are some documents that might need to be closed and reopened at the new state because they don't recognize all aspects of that LLC. But that changes based on each state on what that migration process looks like. So unfortunately, I can't give you a general answer. I helped the client do one recently from New Jersey to, I think it was Michigan, which did not accept a New Jersey LLC, but most of his business was going to be there. So he migrated the company to Michigan. So in that case, it was a little bit lengthy, but again, it's a conversation you want to have. Just have the conversation because sometimes it might make more sense, financial and time-wise, to dissolve and open up a new one, depending on certain contracts. In his case, he wants to migrate it because there were contracts that were given to this company that would not be that are not assumable by the next company that he was going to create. So in his unique situation, it justified migration as opposed to create a new company. So let's see. Would you happen to know if special licensing is required for bookkeepers? As far as I know, I don't know of any special licensing that's required for bookkeepers. Same thing with accountants. To be a CPA, there is a special, you have to pass, the CPA test. But I'm unaware. Doesn't mean that there isn't one or that there is one. I'm just unaware of any special licensing for bookkeepers. Let's see. Can you please advise on this? If you have an LLC by yourself, then you will have I'm sorry, another relative, I'm assuming another family member. Can you, I'm not sure what that word is, agent on 50% of the registration, is this correct? Or you will move to S Corp or partnership? I'm not quite sure if I understand the question. Let me see. If you have an LLC by yourself, and I'm assuming if you add somebody else on it, if you have an LLC by yourself, if it's a single member LLC, then it's just you by yourself, and you have to change it over to a multi-member LLC. Whether you choose the S Corp is more of a conversation for tax purposes, not necessarily for having a partner on it, because you have your 1120 for partnerships. So it just depends, I guess, on or in 1065 too. So it just depends on if I understand the question correctly, it's your single member LLC. If it's single member LLC, you have to create then a multi-member LLC. You would have a conversation about taxes for S Corp. That's a separate conversation. So I think I got the question right. If not, please, rewrite the question. Let's see. Do you have information on grants I'm not sure what SP is, if you can clarify what SP is, or any grants? Now, yes, there are tons of grants, depending on the need of the business, the stage of the business, and the time that you have determines whether you should apply for grants or not. Grants are free money, and as a result, there is a high demand for grants. So in some cases, it's very time consuming to go through the process. In some cases, it's as simple as, filling out a questionnaire. But oftentimes for the grants that are more substantial, you have to jump through a few hoops, and the use of the grant dollars, usually, not always, but most of the time, is very specific and earmarked as to how that money can be used. So it's very important that we understand what the use of the grant dollars are, and does that match what my business needs at that moment. What mistake that I see oftentimes is that people will reshape their business model in order to accommodate for the grant guidelines, which is not the right thing to do. We want to make sure that if the grant is to help provide jobs, is create jobs, that we're actually creating jobs, or if it's to I don't know, provide services within a certain community that would provide that we have the ability and capacity to provide services within that community. So there are several grants. Most grants that that I would be able to guide you guys to would be if you go to grants.gov, grants.gov, and then you can on the left-hand side filter them out by those grants that are just for in business. Now, once you show those grants that are in business and not for the nonprofits or anything else, you can continue to dissect it to see what's applicable to me. Those are the grants that come from the government on a regular basis. There are plenty of private grants, but those grants usually are like fireworks. They'll appear for a moment as long as the funding is available, and when the funds run out, that private grant has to replenish their grants. There are some that are staples, like the Tory Burch Foundation has a regular ongoing grant for women. Same thing with the Coca-Cola Foundation. But again, I would rather spend time building my business and creating revenue than sometimes all the time that it takes to find all these different grants. But again, have that conversation with the business consultants, and then we can find out what the best one for you is. Let's see. I've heard of the QBI deduction for single member LLCs. Can you explain that a little more? So that's more of a tax question that is best answered by an accountant. I try not to get too much into the weeds with tax type questions, just because they are very specific and don't generally apply to all. But there is a there are some guidelines online like that the one that I showed you guys before that do talk quite a bit about their state tax requirements, that do a pretty good job at what the taxes are that I should be mindful of and what they mean. IRS has the same one for the state level taxes. Let's see. You mentioned LLC owners temporarily doing business in another state. Yep. If someone has a food truck business and they do business in other states, not necessarily one or two states regularly, but let's say, where is it? Let's say they plan on doing nationwide festivals and events. Again, so if it's an event that you're doing, a festival, and I'm traveling to, again, like I mentioned before, that convention in Las Vegas, then you just need to get the permission from Las Vegas, to have that vendor's license there. That's a temporary vendor's license. If you plan on doing business regularly around the country, it might make sense to have a conversation with your accountant about the election of a corporation, which might, ease time. It all depends on how many of these licenses you're going to be applying for and on what frequency. Let's see.
Ryan, I think it would be a good idea to stop here for questions. Yeah, apologies to everyone else, but we are hitting our 1 o'clock mark. We hit that and it is 1:16
Yes.
at the moment.
All right.
So on your screen, you'll see that I am showing you our upcoming webinar that is on this Thursday, January 18th. Have UPC barcodes from GS1 lead to business growth? And that will be presented by Caitlin. She's the marketing director at Small Business Growth, GSI US. So feel free to scan that QR code or just go to productbarcode.eventbrite.com. Let me just show everybody real quick our website. So this is the website that we've been talking about all this time, NJSBDC.com. And we have I think our website is a great resource. So if you take a couple of minutes out of your day to just look at this website, you'll find a lot of value. And the way that you can request counseling, this is for general counseling. So for aspiring entrepreneurs, if you have to register your business, then I recommend that you go to our QR code here to talk with Vanessa and her team. But let me just show you where you can find our small business webinars, the library that I've mentioned. So as you can see, this library we have, it's our video library. All our webinars are recorded and appear in 1 to 2 business days. There's like hundreds and hundreds. This pop-up that happens, I highly recommend that you sign up for a newsletter. And all sorts of topic are covered. So from the registration, all our 8 or 9 sessions have been covered. So you can find that there. And if you'd like to attend all the other or any other events from our network, so any other NJSBDC regional center, then you can go onto this page, and some of them are free, some of them require a fee. So for $20 or online or in person. I would also like to mention that we do counsel in Spanish. So, and some of our events held are also in Spanish. So yeah, if just ask that when you go to request counseling, and we can certainly accommodate you. So that is all from my end. Feel free to go to our website, njsbdc.com, scan this QR code if you'd like to start your business today, you can register there. We've helped 15,000 plus small businesses grow in the past 45 years. So we sort of know what we're talking about. And yeah, see you on Thursday. We will be hosting the webinar, excuse me, that I've just talked about. And the next Tuesday, as usual, will be our registration series. So thank you again, Ryan. Thank you all for attending, and I hope you all have a wonderful day and week. Take care.
Thank you.